I was born in a modest coastal town in Florida, the kind of place where the ocean breeze mixed with the smell of salt and fried food from the boardwalk diners. My family lived in a weathered little bungalow. Its roof patched so many times that when the storms rolled in, we would set out buckets in every room just to catch the leaks. My father, Robert, was a mechanic who always smelled of engine grease, and my mother, Susan, worked long hours as a cashier at the local diner. Money was always tight, but in those early years, I didn't know what it meant to be poor. To me, life was just life. That changed the day my younger brother Ben was born. I was 5 at the time, old enough to notice how the rhythm of our family shifted overnight. From the moment Ben let out his first cry, it was as though the sun had broken through storm clouds for everyone except me. My parents beamed at him like he was a gift straight from heaven, and slowly, I began to fade into the background. At first, it was small things. Ben got the new toys while I inherited his hand-me-downs. When I scraped my knee, my father told me to toughen up, but if Ben so much as stubbed his toe, my mother swept him into her arms like he was made of glass. And then there were the whispers I sometimes overheard late at night. My parents murmuring that Alex would probably never amount to much, that at least Ben had a bright future. Those words cut deeper than any bruise. I learned early to swallow the hurt, to carry it quietly like a stone in my pocket. But inside me, something burned. If they thought I was ordinary, then I would show them just how wrong they were. By the time I was 14, I was already hustling to carve out my own path. I delivered newspapers before school, rode my bike to the marina to clean boats, and even started selling homemade snacks to classmates. I squirreled away every dollar, keeping my small stash hidden under a loose floorboard in my room. That money wasn't just paper, it was freedom. It was my ticket out of being invisible. Meanwhile, Ben flourished. He was quick-witted, charming, and seemed to glide through life. My parents never missed a chance to brag about him to neighbors and relatives. Ben's so smart, they'd say, or Ben's going places. My accomplishments, no matter how hard-earned, were met with little more than a nod. The more they elevated him, the more determined I became to stand on my own. The breaking point came when I was 19. I had saved for years, hundreds of hours of odd jobs, to put together a small fund I planned to use for college or maybe to move to a bigger city. One evening, I came home to find my father beaming as Ben rode around the block on a shiny new bike. Where did that come from? I asked, my heart sinking. My father shrugged casually. We needed the money. Ben deserved something nice. I can still remember the rage that boiled inside me that night. That wasn't just money. That was my escape, my dream, my proof that I could build something for myself. And just like that, it was gone, taken without a thought. I stormed out of the house, jumped on my battered scooter, and rode off into the night as the rain poured down in heavy sheets. That was the night I left home for good. Miami greeted me with glittering skyscrapers and neon lights, a world away from my small coastal town. But the city didn't care about my dreams. The first nights were the hardest. I slept on park benches, shivering, my stomach gnawing with hunger. I dug scraps from dumpsters behind restaurants, ashamed but too stubborn to return home. Yet even in those moments of desperation, I told myself this was temporary. I would rise, no matter how far I had fallen. I took whatever jobs I could find. I washed dishes until my hands were raw, waited tables where customers barely glanced at me, and scrubbed docks under the scorching sun. Each job taught me something about grit, about surviving when the odds were stacked against you. But it also taught me something else, self-reliance. If no one else believed in me, then I had no choice but to believe in myself. Calls home were few and far between. When I did manage to scrape together coins for the payphone, my parents asked little about me. The conversations always drifted back to Ben, his grades, his achievements, his charm. I would hang up with the receiver heavy in my hand, feeling smaller than ever. Yet with every slight, my resolve only grew stronger. Fate stepped in one humid afternoon at the marina, where I was hauling nets for a few extra bucks. I overheard a yacht broker complaining that he needed another sales rep. Something inside me stirred. I wiped the sweat from my brow, walked over, and introduced myself. I had no experience, but I had charm, and more importantly, I had hunger. The broker, Marcus, must have seen something in me because he gave me a chance. That job changed my life. At first, I was earning barely enough to scrape by, but I treated every client as if they were my only one. I learned the details of every engine, every luxury feature, every detail that made yachts symbols of wealth. I absorbed everything I could, not just about boats, but about the world of the wealthy, their conversations about investments, real estate, and markets. I was a sponge, soaking up knowledge I never had access to before. The turning point came when I met Mr. Ellis, a Texas oil baron with a taste for cigars and a keen eye for character. One evening, after closing a deal, we sat on the deck of his yacht as the sun set. He studied me thoughtfully and said, "Kid, you remind me of myself. Never forget, money's a tool, not a master." He handed me a book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and told me to start thinking beyond commissions. I devoured that book, then others like it. I began listening more closely to clients, picking up tips about real estate and investments. Slowly, I shifted from just selling yachts to giving advice. My commissions grew, and with every paycheck I invested, first in small coastal properties, then in undervalued Florida stocks. My network expanded. I met Victor, a hotel mogul who invited me into a condo project in Key West. I risked almost everything I had, and when the project doubled in returns, I realized I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was building. Of course, the path wasn't smooth. The 2008 crash hit hard. Property values plummeted, and I watched investments I had poured my heart into crumble. But instead of folding, I doubled down on learning. I studied markets obsessively, adapting strategies, and finding opportunities where others saw ruin. By 25, I was ready to break free from Marcus and the brokerage world. I founded Thorn Ventures, starting with yacht rentals and expanding into brokerage deals. I bought a small beachfront lot for my first resort, a gamble funded by grit, loans, and sheer willpower. Hurricanes battered it, but I had prepared with insurance and diversification. Each obstacle became a stepping stone. The years flew by in a blur of sleepless nights and relentless work. By the time I was 31, Thorn Ventures had grown into an empire with 25 employees and assets worth $150 million. I was no longer the overlooked boy in the leaky bungalow. I was proof that perseverance could rewrite destiny. And yet, success couldn't erase old wounds. My parents began calling more often, but not out of affection. "We need money for the roof," they'd say. "Your brother needs help with a new business idea." I always sent the money, hoping each time it might rebuild a bridge between us. By the time I turned 35, I had built the kind of life I used to dream about as a boy staring at the cracks in our bungalow ceiling. Thorn Ventures was thriving. My resorts dotted along Florida's coastline, and I lived in a glass-walled mansion overlooking the Atlantic. From the outside, it looked like I had everything a man could want. And yet, despite the wealth, the success, and the recognition, a hollow space lingered inside me. It was in that space that Clara entered my life. I met her at a charity gala in Miami, an event thrown for coastal conservation. Normally, I dreaded those kind of evenings, the forced conversations, the shallow praise, but that night felt different. The room sparkled with chandeliers, champagne glasses clinked, and strings played softly in the background. I remember standing near a display of coral reef photographs when I felt someone step beside me. "Mr. Thorne," a voice said, warm and confident, "your resorts have redefined luxury for Florida. I should know. I've had clients raving about them." I turned, and there she was, Clara Voss. She was 29, with long auburn hair that caught the light, emerald eyes that seemed to see right through me, and a smile that disarmed every ounce of guardedness I had carried for years. She worked as a PR consultant for elite clients, and unlike many people I met at those events, her words didn't feel rehearsed. She asked about my story, not just my business, and when I told her about my humble beginnings, she listened with a quiet intensity that made me feel heard for the first time in a long while. As the night went on, we talked for hours. She told me about her fractured childhood in New York, how her parents divorced when she was a teenager, leaving her to fend for herself. She had clawed her way into success, starting with nothing but determination. When she said, "I know what it's like to feel abandoned," Something deep inside me stirred. Our connection was instant and undeniable. Soon, dinners turned into long walks along the beach, and business calls were replaced by late-night conversations on dreams and fears. I let her see the parts of me no one else saw, the scars from being overlooked, the quiet ache of wanting to belong. She didn't just listen, she understood. One night, under the stars on the deck of my yacht, I confessed, I always felt like an outsider in my own family. She placed her hand on mine and whispered, "Then let me be your true family." I believed her. Our romance was a whirlwind. We traveled to Paris, where she laughed freely in the glow of the Eiffel Tower. We walked barefoot on Bahamian sands, where I dropped to one knee and asked her to be my wife, presenting a sapphire ring that mirrored the color of her eyes. Tears streamed down her face as she said yes, and in that moment I felt whole. The wedding was a spectacle, hosted at my resort in Fort Lauderdale. White silk tents billowed in the ocean breeze. A symphony played beneath a canopy of lights, and 250 guests, from moguls to city officials, celebrated with us. My parents arrived, flown in first class, beaming with a pride that felt performative. "You've come far, son," my father said, though his eyes wandered more to the extravagance around us than to me. My brother Ben, now 30, grinned and clapped me on the back. For once, he wasn't the center of attention, though I could sense his envy simmering beneath the surface. Clara and I moved into our Ocean View mansion, and the first months were everything I had imagined. Quiet mornings with coffee overlooking the waves, evenings planning our future. She left her PR career to join Thorn Ventures, and her sharp ideas helped expand our resorts internationally. For the first time, I thought I had found not just a partner in business, but in life. But success has a way of drawing shadows. It started with phone calls from my parents. They rarely asked how I was doing. Instead, they asked for money. "The house needs repairs," my mother would say. 40,000 should cover it. My brother Ben, meanwhile, was stumbling from one failed venture to the next, a gym that closed within a year, a crypto gamble that left him broke. His calls became desperate. "Bro, I need 80,000 for my next big idea. This one's foolproof." Each time I told myself it was my duty, that maybe my generosity would finally earn me the acceptance I'd been denied as a child. But no matter how much I gave, it was never enough. Clara noticed my weariness and warned, "They're not family, Alex. They're leeches. You don't owe them your empire." I nodded, but deep down, I couldn't let go of the hope that somehow we could mend. Still, the weight grew heavier. Ben began visiting the mansion more often, lingering longer than a brother should. At first, I brushed off the little things, the way Clara laughed a bit too freely at his jokes, the subtle glances they exchanged in the kitchen. One evening, I walked in on the two of them whispering, only for Clara to wave it off with a laugh. Just catching up, nothing more. I wanted to believe her. I had to, but the debts kept climbing. By the time Ben owed me nearly 400,000, my patience snapped. When I refused his latest request, he spat, "You've changed, Alex. Money's made you cold." My parents sided with him, scolded me over the phone. "You're the elder. You're supposed to help your brother." Clara told me to cut them off completely, but I caught her one night texting Ben. When I asked, she claimed it was just family check-ins. The unease gnawed at me. That Christmas, I invited them all to the mansion, determined to prove to myself that we could still be a family. I showered them with lavish gifts, designer watches, a car for my parents, anything to bridge the distance. But instead of gratitude, I saw greed flickering in their eyes. As the wine flowed, my father, drunk, muttered, "Make it will soon, son. Family should inherit while you're young." Ben chuckled in agreement, and I caught Clara's eyes flicking toward him as she gripped her glass. My heart pounded as I asked her privately, "Is there anything going on with Ben?" She laughed, brushing my suspicion aside. "That's madness, Alex. I love only you." I wanted to believe her, but the doubt lingered like a shadow in the room. To heal the rift, I proposed something bold, a family cruise on my yacht, Ocean's Grace. A week together in the Caribbean, I said. Just us. No business, no debts, just family. Clara's eyes gleamed, my parents cheered, and Ben smirked with strange satisfaction. I told myself this trip would mend us, that laughter and shared sunsets would wash away years of resentment. I envisioned barbecues on deck, snorkeling in turquoise waters, and conversations that might finally make me feel like I belonged. As I prepared the yacht, hiring a gourmet chef and planning island stops, I felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps this voyage would be the start of something new. But deep down, beneath the surface of my optimism, a dread I couldn't name whispered to me. I didn't know it then, but that cruise would not unite us. It would shatter everything. The morning we set sail on Ocean's Grace was as perfect as any postcard. The sky was a canvas of blue, the waters shimmered like liquid glass, and the air carried the kind of promise that makes you believe in second chances. My parents beamed as they boarded, marveling at the polished teak decks. Ben strutted around as if the yacht already belonged to him, while Clara floated gracefully among them, her sundress dancing in the breeze. For a moment, I let myself hope. The first day unfolded like a dream. We toasted with champagne, feasted on lobster brunches, and dove into turquoise reefs where schools of fish shimmered like jewels. I watched my mother giggle at Ben's stories, my father telling old tales from his mechanic days, and Clara leading conversations with ease. A small part of me thought, maybe this really can work. Maybe family can be healed. But shadows soon crept in. When we swam off the side of the yacht, I noticed Ben's arm lingering around Clara a little too long, guiding her through the waves as she laughed softly. At dinner, when the chef served sea bass, Clara leaned closer to Ben than I liked, whispering something that made him grin. I told myself I was imagining things, that paranoia was poisoning what could be a beautiful memory. It was the second night, when the mask of harmony began to slip. We gathered on deck after dinner, the stars glittering above us. Drinks flowed freely, laughter echoing over the waves. Then casually, Ben leaned back in his chair and said, "So, Alex, all this, your empire, the resorts, the yachts, you'll leave it all to us one day, right?" I chuckled uneasily. "I'm not planning on leaving any time soon." My father leaned in, his voice rough with drink. "It's time you thought about a will. Family should come first. Ben still needs his chance." My mother nodded in agreement. Clara said nothing, staring out to sea with her jaw tight. The words stung. After everything I had built, after every sacrifice, was this what they thought of me? Not a man to love, but a fortune to divide? The tension drove me to the railing, where I let the night wind cool my burning thoughts. That's when I felt Ben step beside me. His voice was low, mocking. "You've always thought you were better than us, didn't you? Let's see how well you do without your empire." Before I could respond, I felt his hand slam into my back. The world tilted. The railing vanished beneath me. I plunged into the icy blackness of the sea. The shock stole the breath from my lungs. Salt water filled my mouth, the waves crashing over me. Above, I caught a glimpse of the deck, my father standing coldly, my mother clutching her shawl, Clara raising a glass as Ben wrapped his arm around her. My heart shattered. Their betrayal was deeper than the ocean that tried to swallow me. I kicked, thrashed, fought against the weight of my soaked clothes and the burn in my chest. "Not like this." I gasped to myself. "They don't get to win." By some miracle, my hands found a floating plank of wood, drifted debris from the yacht stores. I clung to it desperately, every wave threatening to drag me under. Hours passed in a blur of agony. My body numbed, my mind hallucinated. I saw Ben laughing, Clara whispering, my parents toasting to my death. Memories surged, sleeping on park benches, building my first resort, hearing Mr. Ellis's voice. "Money's a tool, not a master." Those words kept me alive. By dawn, the horizon glowed faintly. I had no strength left to hope, when a beam of light swept across the water, a patrol boat, summoning the last of my will. I croaked out a cry. The crew spotted me, hauled me aboard, and wrapped me in blankets. "What happened?" they asked. I forced a weak smile. "Tourist yacht accident. Name's Jack Reed." I knew then I could reveal who I really was. If my family believed I was dead, I could use that to uncover the truth. They dropped me at a Bahamian hospital. where I recovered in silence, replaying the betrayal over and over. When I was strong enough, I slipped away, contacting the only man I trusted, Theo, an old marina buddy who now owned a bar. When he saw me alive, his eyes widened. "Alex, what hell have you been through?" I told him everything. He didn't hesitate. "You'll stay with me. No one can know." He tucked me away in a small attic above his bar. I shaved my beard, buzzed my hair, wore thrift store clothes. In the mirror, I no longer saw the billionaire Alex Thorne. I saw a ghost. News trickled in. Clara wept on television, speaking of her tragic loss. Ben gave solemn interviews, calling me a hero who loved his family. My parents looked grief-stricken for the cameras. Yet behind those masks, I knew the truth. They were celebrating. Rage ignited in me, but I forced myself to be patient. I reached out to Jacob, my trusted VP. "Lock down everything." I told him, "Don't let them touch my assets." He confirmed what I suspected. Clara and Ben were already trying to file claims as my heirs. Through Theo's contacts, I hired a private investigator named Raul. What he uncovered chilled me. Clara hadn't just stumbled into my life. She'd been paid to. My parents and Ben had pooled money to lure her into a relationship with me, hoping she'd become their inside connection. Later, she and Ben grew close, turning a manipulation into something darker. Meanwhile, I placed hidden cameras in my mansion through loyal staff. The footage that came back broke me, yet gave me the proof I needed. Clara and Ben together, mocking me, plotting their inheritance. My parents sipping champagne in my villa, talking about what they would do with their fortune. The puzzle was complete. The favoritism I had endured as a child had not ended. It had evolved into betrayal of the worst kind. They hadn't just tried to erase me. They had tried to profit from my death. But they had underestimated one thing. I was still alive, and I wasn't going to let their greed go unpunished. The weeks after my survival were filled with silence and strategy. From the attic above Theo's bar, I watched my old life unravel on television. News anchors repeated the phrase, "billionaire lost at sea," while images of Clara crying into tissues and Ben giving solemn interviews dominated the headlines. The world saw a grieving widow, a heartbroken brother, and devastated parents. But I knew better. I wasn't watching a tragedy. I was watching a performance. Each clip, each article, each crocodile tear hardened my resolve. They thought they had erased me, but they had only given me a new purpose. My wealth, my name, even my legacy had been reduced to ashes in their hands. But ashes can give rise to fire. It was Jacob, my loyal VP, who gave me the news that lit the final spark. "They've started hosting events in your villa," he whispered over the phone. "Clara and Ben are presenting themselves as heirs, entertaining investors, even signing documents that suggest you're gone for good." I clenched my fists. My home, my empire, my name, all used as props in their scheme. I decided then I wouldn't confront them in anger or in secrecy. No, my return had to be undeniable, unforgettable. I would expose them in the very house they had desecrated. The perfect opportunity came sooner than I expected. Clara announced a grand gala at the villa, a celebration of legacy, she called it in interviews. The guest list glittered with politicians, tycoons, and celebrities. It would be her stage to cement her role as the grieving heiress. But it would also be mine. The night of the gala, I stood outside my villa's glowing windows, my heart pounding like a war drum. Dressed simply in a dark suit, I felt invisible, like a shadow come to life. For a moment, fear clawed at me. What if they tried again? What if no one believed me? But then I remembered the boy in the bungalow who had been told he would never be enough. I remembered the young man who slept on benches, the dreamer who built an empire brick by brick, the survivor who refused to drown. That man wasn't built to run. I pushed open the back door and stepped inside. The music swelled, glasses clinked, and laughter rippled to the grand hall. Clara stood at the center, dazzling in a glittering gown, raising her glass. Ben hovered close to her, his hand brushing hers with familiarity that made bile rise in my throat. My parents sat nearby, basking the glow of wealth they never earned. And then silence. One by one, heads turned. Clara froze mid-toast, her glass slipping from her fingers and shattering on the marble floor. Ben's face drained of color. My mother gasped, and my father's lips parted in disbelief. I stepped forward, my voice steady, carrying across the room. "The sea tried to claim me," I said, "but it spat me back. And now, you will all face what you tried to bury." The room erupted into whispers. Guests pulled out phones. Flashes lit the air. "Alex," Clara stammered, her face pale. "You're alive?" "Alive," I replied coldly, "despite your best efforts." I pulled a small remote from my pocket and pressed it. A projector flickered to life, displaying footage on the white wall behind me. Hidden camera, recordings of Clara and Ben in intimate embraces, their mocking laughter, their plans for my fortune. Gasps filled the hall. Some guests covered their mouths in shock. "Is this your grief?" I asked, my voice trembling with controlled fury. "Celebrating in my home while the world mourned me?" Ben stepped forward, fists clenched. "These are lies. Deep fakes. He's trying to ruin us." "Lies," I countered, clicking again. The screen filled with screenshots of financial transfers, documents Clara had signed prematurely, text messages arranging the very betrayal that nearly ended my life. Proof layered upon proof. Clara collapsed into a chair, her mask cracking. "Alex, please," she begged, tears welling. "I was forced into this. Your parents and Ben pressured me. I loved you, I truly did." I stared at her, my heart breaking all over again. "Love doesn't shove a man into the sea, Clara. Love doesn't sell vows for money." Ben's face twisted with rage. "You were always jealous," he spat. "Mom and Dad loved me more, and they were right. You don't deserve any of this." I turned to my parents, my voice quieter now, heavy with pain. "And you? Was I ever truly your son? Or was I just the wallet you wish Ben could be?" My mother wept silently. My father looked away. Their silence was answer enough. That's when the doors burst open. Police officers stormed in, their presence requested days earlier through Jacob's careful arrangements. I handed over the drive containing all the evidence: financial fraud, conspiracy, attempted murder. The officers moved swiftly, cuffing Ben, then Clara, then my parents. The sight should have satisfied me, but instead, I felt only emptiness. As they were led away, Clara looked back at me one last time. "You'll be alone forever, Alex," she hissed. "Money can't keep you warm." I met her gaze steadily. "No, but truth can." The aftermath was a storm of headlines. "Billionaire returns from the dead, exposes family conspiracy." The world ate it up, but I stayed away from the cameras. I had no desire to relive the betrayal for entertainment. I let the courts do their work. The trial was brutal, but the evidence was irrefutable. Claire was sentenced to 8 years for fraud and conspiracy. Ben received 12 for attempted murder and financial crimes. My parents, though their sentences were lighter, faced 6 years each for their role in the scheme. I didn't attend the sentencing. I didn't need to. Their punishment was not my closure. Instead, I poured my energy into something greater. I sold the villa that had become a stage of betrayal and donated the proceeds to youth shelters. I founded the Rise Again Foundation, dedicated to helping young dreamers from broken families, kids who had been told they were ordinary or unworthy. I wanted them to know what I had learned, that your beginning does not dictate your ending. Theo expanded his bar with my support, finally able to live without worry. Jacob became CEO of Thorn Ventures, steering it with the loyalty he had always shown me. Mia and Luis, the villa staff who had risked everything to feed me information, were rewarded with enough to retire comfortably. As for me, I stepped back from the empire. I no longer chased wealth for validation. I walked beaches at sunrise, skipped pebbles into the surf, and let the wind remind me that I had survived worse than storms. Sometimes people ask why I didn't try to rebuild ties with my family, why I let them fade into history. My answer is simple. Family isn't defined by blood. It's defined by love, loyalty, and truth. I found family and friends who stood by me when the world thought I was dead, not in those who tried to profit from my absence. And I carry one final lesson, the moral of my story. True wealth isn't measured in yachts, mansions, or bank accounts. It's measured in integrity, in resilience, in the courage to rise when the world tries to sink you. Betrayal may break you, but it doesn't define you. What defines you is how you rebuild. Not just for yourself, but for others who need the light of your survival to guide their own. I was a boy they called ordinary. I was the man they tried to erase. But I stand here today, alive and unbroken. Proof that no storm, no betrayal, and no sea can drown the will of a soul determined to rise again.